Hello and welcome to the Tea Party Howdy channel for a review of Trickster Season 1. This show was brought to my attention by one of the viewers of my video on reservation dogs, and so, because I'd never heard of it. So thank you to him for pointing it out to me and letting me have the opportunity to find it and watch it. So here we go. Alright, this show is 6 episodes long in Season 1. I'm guessing that's because the pandemic made it get shorter. It's a 1-hour show, and it takes place in Canada. They use Canadian money, and they don't say a boot, but yeah, there's that. And the mysticism of the show is based on Canadian Indians instead of the lower 48. And the concept, comparing it a little bit to Reservation Dogs, which was my launching pad to find the show via the viewer, is that this is a very poor family. Whether or not they live on the reservation, it doesn't say, so I don't know. But they probably do. Anyway, they are very poor. The mom hears voices in her head and fights with them on a regular basis. The boy is just a high school student with a friend, and a new girl moves in next door who is very punk rockish, for lack of a better term, and catches his eye, of course. And then he's having a little bit of trouble in school. The way the show works is episode 1 goes the whole show and then drops a bomb at the end. Same with episode 2 and same with episode 3. So there's huge revelations at the end of each one of episode 1, 2, and 3. By 4, 5, and 6, they still give you a lot to play with, but there's no more bombs to drop because they pretty much let all that go. Now, the acting in the show is very good. It's not as good as Reservation Dogs, but it's not as bad as the Hallmark movies at Christmas that I love so much. And the chemistry between the acting is really good. It's kind of, again, these shows are all made in Canada, and there's so many scenes where they're in the lake, and it's like, how do they do that and not have purple lips and chatter? I just don't get it, because that water is anything but close to warm. So as far as the mysticism goes, one of the things I really liked about this show was when I started watching Game of Thrones way back when it first came out, it promised all this mysticism in the trailer, and it barely delivered. Through the whole show, there's some, but it's really not the focal point like it showed on the trailer. Now, I did not know anything about this show at all before I watched it, because if I can get away with that, I will. If it looks interesting, I'll watch it, and that way I don't have anything to pollute it and make me think one direction or the other. And this one has lots of mysticism, but because it's taking place in Canada, it's blending, at least if I can trust the subtitles on the music, they're mixing all the different Indians' folklore into one. And I don't know, I mean, as a viewer, I love it, but I don't know how that feels up there, because when I lived in Arizona, I had a friend who was Navajo who was married to an Apache, and that is like the Hatfields marrying the McCoys. You're just not supposed to do that. But they did it because they were in love and their marriage was fine. But it's the idea of the conglomeration of Indians on this continent into the unified word Indians, which is something that just Americans do. We love to just squish everybody into one group. It's a lot easier to converse and have conversations, but it leaves out the distinctions that can be quite relevant. There was a series, oh my gosh, after Dancing with Wolves came out, called 500 Nations, documentary series. Really great series, but it's the way it's put together is so fragmented that it makes it hard to actually learn from, because if you actually watch it chronologically, if you rearrange it chronologically, there's not that much there, and that's kind of A through Z. There's actually not that much there. But it was still a good introduction. And the music was great. Written by Warren Buffett's son. Yep, I didn't know Warren Buffett was living on the res. But anyways. So the show has the mysticism from a collection of the different groups up there. And you have without giving away too many spoilers, you have witches versus the ancient ones versus the Trickster. Now, I have my biggest complaint about the show and the Trickster is the Trickster is featured being able to morph into anything at once, we're told, and we see a few times, but its main focal point is turning into a raven or a crow. I'm not sure which, because the thing that distinguishes a raven and a crow, it's you need more elements than just the one bird being on camera. Because, boy, those birds look a lot alike. Okay, anyway. And so I don't like the way they deal with the shape-shifting issue, because they're not, I don't want to say they're inconsistent, but they tilt towards it. They really do. And the relationships are played out pretty darned well. And as I was saying earlier, when you compare it to the Christmas shows, which are all these upper class people that can afford to go on all these crazy vacations for long times, and if you're one of them, hey, God bless you. But then there's people that live like this, you know, my people. Can't afford anything but a beat-up old truck. Yeah, I'm like, wow, representation, finally. And so, yeah, it's really, really easy for me to relate to all these people, where I just watch the other ones to aspire. But, so yeah, it's like, if you are one of those people who live in the world of the Christmas special, yeah, this is really how the other half does live. We do have the big parties, and the house is a mess, and we do drive beaters, and yeah, you're probably wondering where we got the money to pay rent, and for the record, so are we. So, yeah, it's So you get witches versus the ancients versus the tricksters, and now, one of the things I'm going to say about the show seems like a diss, but I don't mean it to be. On Reservation Dogs, that show's 22 minutes, but it feels like an hour because there's so much plot. This show is an hour, and it feels like 2, and I don't know why. It doesn't feel draggy. It just, I guess because I'm used to the 22-minute shows, or the half-an-hour shows, more. Maybe that's what it is. Probably. So, and it definitely has a lot more meat on it than the superheroes do, Flash and Green Arrow and all that stuff. And maybe that's it. You know, they're just putting a lot more story in there, and they really, really do put a lot of story in there. As far as the effects go, not bad. The effects really aren't bad. I mean, there's not much money to spend on the budget, so why not? But is it worth watching? Of course it's worth watching. It's a good show. The IMDb has it listed as a mystery. I'm like, well, I guess you got to list it as something, but I wouldn't. I'd list it as a religious fantasy, and not to be dissing anybody's religion, but, you know, you would say the same thing if you had a person sprouting wings that's an angel. You know, that would still be called a religious fantasy, so I'm not picking on anybody's religion like that. The fight scenes are pretty cool, and it's mainly an intellectual show where you're dealing with them dealing with all of these ancient issues coming back and how to deal with them in the modern world, which is a fantastic way to carry on the heritage of any people. You modernize it and tell the story again through new eyes, while remembering the ancient versions. You know, take Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, whatever. You do the new versions to keep it fresh, but you still keep the classic one there to go, this is the foundation. It really, really works that way to keep your culture intact. So by doing this show and doing the other new ones that have exploded with Reservation Dogs and Wild Indian, which is an independent feature, they're getting to do that. And as I mentioned in another video, it's the first time that they've been either allowed to or chose to do it from the point of view of, we're in this world now. We're not going to dress up like we did in the 1800s, which they made them do in all the other shows before the 20-year gap of, well, where did all the American Indians go in the media? And yeah, so what you can take away from this, besides the fact that it's a good show, it's worth watching, and it doesn't have, I'm like, does this show have comedy in it? It's got a couple of spots where you laugh, but it's not a comedy. It's much more of an action adventure. It's far more intellectual than the superhero shows, by a long shot. Zero wokeism in this show. Got to appreciate that. And the one thing this show does that I don't understand because I don't think the show's even on in America, but I don't know, is they use the F word a lot. And it's funny because they use the F word and they don't use the other cuss words. So there was an interview with one of the Star Trek people. And they were saying the reason they dropped the F-bomb so many times in Picard is because they can. I'm like, wow, that's really, really not thoughtful production. Well, close we could. And especially in Star Trek where cuss words don't even belong. Colorful metaphors, as they were called in Star Trek 4. But here it is, this show, and it's like, well, why are they dropping the F-bomb when it is still the F-bomb? And they're not even dropping any of the other cuss words. So I think they're doing it just because they can. But I really wish they wouldn't. It's just, not everybody likes that kind of language. And it's definitely, when you're using it because you can, that's not storytelling. As much as I hate cuss words in shows and movies, and at the wrong place, when I watch Italian gangster movies, dude, they really do use that word. If you do a movie with Italian gangsters and you don't use bad language, it's not authentic. So I stomach it in that because it's necessary. And do teenagers and everything cuss like that? Yeah. But again, they're only using that one, so they're doing it from a point of view of production, not storytelling. And I don't like that. It's obvious what they're doing and why they're doing it. It's just, no, that pulls me out of the story when you do that. So, that is my review for Trickster Season 1. Hopefully there will be a Season 2, and where it's going to go, kind of obvious. And I got to say this as a warning. This show's Season 2 has the ability to really, really screw it up, because the way they laid the foundation in Season 1 does make it pretty obvious for Season 2. And if they go too deep into the obvious, then it's just not going to be that fun. But if they do like the other shows have done, what's the one with the kids that were from the 80s? Stranger Things. Season 2 has nothing to do with Season 1, and Season 3 didn't even remember that they did Season 2. That's the wrong direction also. So you can just cross your fingers and hope they just continue the story like normal. Because it's a good story foundation. And the thing is with the witches, it's pretty cool. And the elders, it's pretty cool. My favorite part is the witches and the way they work. Just because they haven't given you that much, so they tease you a lot. And I like that part. The other one, they kind of give you like, okay. And I just don't like seeing people run around without skin on. It's kind of gross. Okay, so there you go. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the future.